before the race really got into the final stages where she might have to go into an anaerobic pace and really push.
I'm always kind of stunned by the fact that people with asthma run in marathons and sprints. There have been a good many runners who've had it.
There have been, and the thing that these asthmatic athletes have to watch are the drugs that they take before competitions, because many of them are restricted drugs that cannot be used in competition because of the drug testing that will take place after this race.
Young Mr. Aguda still up there on the lead in the men's race with Andres Espinoza of Mexico. Talk about a culture shock. This man running in New York for the first time, has never been here before, running across this bridge. Couldn't be more different from his mountainous home where his family grows coffee and raises cattle in Kenya. These two guys beginning to make things look a little like they might do it.
Well, Espinoza's a tough character. Lemec will have his hands full with him. He's an experienced marathoner, although he hasn't been running very long. 2 years ago, he was working full-time in a steel mill in Mexico, and he took a bus from his home in Mexico to Dallas and won a marathon there. I saw him get second in the San Francisco Marathon 2 years ago, and his form's a lot better now. He used to have a way of throwing his one arm to the side that would really get him late in the race. But his form is better. As I said, he's improved his 10K time. That's about a 6-mile race by a minute. That's a huge improvement. So this is a guy that is really on the rise.
Okay, well, very soon they'll be turning onto First Avenue, where the largest crowd are gathered always for the New York City Marathon. And when they turn onto First Avenue, we're going to try to pick up the tremendous roar. That really hits you kind of like a wall, doesn't it, Joan?
That's a very big rush, Jim. But right here, looking at Espinoza and Lemec Aguta, you can tell who the experienced athlete is. The shots of Andres showed us how focused he is. He's not looking around. His head's not bobbing. He's just totally focused. And you can see right behind him, Kim is focused as well. He's very smooth. As a matter of fact, he looks like he's in the best position to me now. And you can see Aguta beginning to look around.
If I was in that pack, he's the guy I would fear the most. Because right now, the Koreans are running very well at the marathon, as are the Japanese. He felt and said in the press conference earlier in the week that he didn't run a good race at the Olympics and that he could run much better here. And that's a scary thought. He only finished 28th at the Olympics, but he's a solid performer before that. The big question about him has always been the way that Korean and Japanese runners run when they leave their own countries. In their own countries, the courses are very fast. They're kind of catered to. And they mentioned that by having his teammate Huang win the Olympics, now they're all convinced that the foreign athletes, although they're bigger, are not better.
Interesting that both of the two leaders of the moment, at least, come from high altitude. Gives you kind of a good start for marathon running, doesn't it?
It does, especially to be born at high altitude. All the Mexican runners, and there were 5 of them up there, originally trained together in the desert of the Lions Park. It's at about 9,000 feet, and they run 120, 130 miles a week up there. So that's, you know, a lot more stress on you than when you live at sea level and only run 85, 90 miles a week, which is what a lot of people in the world believe can get them to the starting line at the New York City Marathon, and it just doesn't cut it anymore.
Well, there's the crowd waiting for them as they will turn into First Avenue. It won't be long before the men get there. In fact, here they come.
Very interestingly, the Mexicans are training with Rodolfo Gomez, who was second behind Alberto Salazar here for a couple of years.
There they are. And they head right onto the avenue. I think we may be able to pick up the roar. There we go. They're on First Avenue now. That'll be a good long run. First Avenue, where the yuppies hang out, I'm told. Bars there, fashionable eating places and movies, that sort of thing.
This is where the crowds really go wild, and if you have anything left, this is where you start to pull it out. They really are enthusiastic. They're spending almost as much exercise as the athletes out there. The crowds have been steady up until this point, but there's nothing like the enthusiasm of this crowd.
It's just tremendous. As we said, the police estimate about 2 million people line this course, and a great many of the 2 million are on First Avenue. Look from the helicopter now. Beautiful day, remember. Perfect for running. Temperature probably right now about 50 degrees. It's 48 degrees when the race started. And they're the men's leaders, the Mexican and the African. Larry?
Jim, the pace continues to pick up. They came off the bridge. They were flying. Aguda looks superb. Kim Wong-Ki is running well. The most comfortable, because of his stride pattern, which is so great, is Willie Matola. Espinoza looks absolutely like a football linebacker. He looks so strong and comfortable. His legs move like pistons, and I think this surging will continue all the way up First Avenue.
Well, last year, of course, he
There's
was
parades
second.
for royalty and for World Series winners, but there's nothing like the New York City Marathon for the average athlete. And First Avenue proves it time and time again. And in just a few minutes, you're going to see 25,000 runners come down this street, experiencing one of the great thrills of a lifetime athletically. It is really amazing. The walls of all of the apartment buildings here, the sound echoes from one side of the street off the wall and back down to the street. I would not be able to deliver the reports if I weren't wearing these headphones which block out the sound. It is absolutely deafening. Steve Brace told me that last year, from the cheering and the sirens and the bands, that he had a headache. I said, "You wish you hadn't gone through it?" He said, "Oh, no." He said, "It was the best headache I ever had."
It'll be a long while before Fred Lebo gets there, but just imagine. The crowd's going to wait for him today, I'm sure of that. There you hear them. Thrill of a lifetime for anybody, even a world-class marathon. We'll be back with much more. We still have Espinoza of Mexico and Aguda of Kenya, the leaders. The Korean perhaps not yet making his move, Marty.
Right. I think that Aguda has done Espinoza a favor here by throwing in some surges, and that has enabled him to pull them both to pull away. I think when they get into the park that Aguda is going to have a problem. Of these two, I would say Espinoza would be the winner, and Espinoza really now needs to be thinking about Kim behind him almost as much as Lamek Aguda. Only because it's Aguda's first marathon, and the experience is necessary, I think, to win here in New York, especially when you get to the hills in the park. Aguda hasn't run a marathon, but he did lead the Berlin Marathon for 30 kilometers, but that's a lot different than going 35 kilometers and hitting the hills in Central Park.
Well, Espinoza's 29. The other kid is just 21 years old, as you said. The experience gap is pretty big there. Last year, I think it was just about here, it was certainly on First Avenue, that Salvador Garcia, the countryman of Espinoza, made his move, broke away. Eventually, this man, Espinoza, finished second in the race, so he may have the same tactics as his partner did last year.
Right, but you know, this year the Mexicans came here and tried to work together. There is this group of about 9 really good Mexican runners, but Salvatore Garcia, who won here last year, is not among that group. He does not train with them. He trains alone. So they really weren't working together last year. That was a real battle of individuals. But it looks as if Kim is quite a ways out of the picture.
Here in Central Park now, Donna Deverona is with Mark Hodges, who was one of the favorites for this race, but who dropped out at the start. We were told that he had pulled a hamstring just before the start. Let's find out the real story from him and Donna.
Thank you, Jim. Mark Platches and Jobis Ondieki were standing side by side in the park. Jobis saying he can't watch his wife, Lisa. He just is hoping she's going to keep up the pace. But, Mark, I think your injury probably puts in perspective just how hard it is to stay in shape as a marathoner. Can you tell us what sidelined you this morning?
Well, Donna, on Tuesday, on my last speed session, which, by the way, was just the most easiest session that I've done in the 20 weeks leading up to the marathon, I did some 400